Have you ever wondered if your own father traded you like property, what would you do? In a small red-dusted village called Amiri, there lived a girl named Glory, just 22 years old. She had nothing but one thing, the pain of betrayal by her own family. Since her mother passed, her father, once a kind farmer, had turned into a violent drunk. Not only that, but he married a woman who hated Glory with every breath. Then came the day that would change everything. A young man named Harrison, who had been working tirelessly on Mr. Thomas's farm for 3 months, finally gathered the courage to demand his unpaid wages. But instead of money, Mr. Thomas pointed at Glory and said, "Take the girl, that's your payment." "Take her and leave." Glory froze, her eyes widened. Her heart almost stopped. She had just been sold. No one objected, no one intervened, not even a whisper of concern. Not a hug, not a blessing, only one tearful goodbye. Her little half-brother, peeking from behind a wall, silently crying. But the strangest thing was, the man who took her that day, he wasn't like any man she had ever known. The journey from Almiri to the city was longer than Glory had ever imagined. She sat by the window of the rusted bus, gripping her black plastic bag of belongings, the only thing she owned. She didn't speak, Harrison didn't either. The silence between them felt like a blanket of uncertainty. As the bus rattled over bumpy roads, Glory's thoughts swirled. Is this man like my father? Will he beat me too, or is he worse? But when she dared to glance at him, she noticed something strange. Harrison wasn't angry, he wasn't even watching her. He looked thoughtful, almost burdened. And then it hit her, maybe he didn't want her either. Do you think Harrison is hiding something? Or is he just another man using a broken girl? Comment your first impression of Harrison below. When they reached the city, Glory's eyes widened. Tall buildings, flashing lights, fast-moving people. It was another planet. Harrison led her through a flower-lined path until they stopped at a massive black gate. A guard opened it, and what Glory saw made her mouth fall open. A white-painted mansion, sculpted gardens. A bubbling fountain in the corner, it looked like a scene from a dream. But Harrison didn't lead her inside. Instead, he walked past the mansion to a modest one-bedroom building in the back. "This is the boys' quarters," he said with a soft smile. "It's where I stay." Glory stepped in. The place was small, but clean, a real bed, curtains, even soap in the bathroom. She looked around and whispered, "If this is God's plan, then maybe, just maybe, I'm safe." Have you ever seen something small, but it felt like everything? Tell us about a time when something simple made you feel safe. For the first time in years, Glory woke up. In silence, no screaming stepmother. No drunken father, no bruises, no fear. Just the warm smell of frying eggs. She stepped into the small kitchen to find Harrison humming quietly, flipping breakfast. "Morning, Glory," he said with a smile. "Hope you slept well." She nodded, almost in disbelief. "Yes, like a baby." And they both laughed, a soft, real laugh. Something Glory forgot her body could even do. Would you trust a man who's done nothing but give you peace? Or would fear still haunt you? Share your thoughts below. 2 days later, Harrison looked at Glory and said, "Get dressed, I want you to meet someone." They walked toward the mansion. At the door stood an elegant woman in her 50s, regal, serene, with kind, observant eyes. "This is Glory," Harrison said, "my wife." Glory's heart nearly stopped. Wife, he had never said that before. Not aloud, the woman smiled warmly. "You're even lovelier than he described." She introduced herself as Mrs. Walker and gently took Glory's hand. "You're welcome here, my dear. This house has enough room for peace. Make sure you take it." And for the first time, Glory felt seen. If a stranger welcomed you like family after all you've been through, would you trust them or still wait for betrayal? That night, as Harrison fixed a broken handle, Glory sat quietly on the bed. "Can I tell you something?" she asked softly. He nodded. "When my father gave me to you, I thought you'd hurt me. That maybe you'd be worse than him." Tears welled in her eyes, but you gave me peace. You cooked for me, you respected me. I don't regret coming with you anymore. Harrison sat beside her, gently holding her hand. Glory, I would never hurt you. That's not the kind of man I want to be. He paused, looked her in the eyes. You're a queen. You've just been hidden in the wrong palace. Glory's tears flowed, but this time, they weren't from pain. Has someone ever treated you better than you thought you deserved? Drop A if you believe every broken soul still deserves a gentle love. A week had passed and still, Harrison had never touched her. One night, Glory lay beside him and whispered into the quiet, "Why haven't you touched me?" Harrison blinked, surprised. She continued, voice trembling. Other men would have forced themselves on me already. But you didn't. Harrison sat up slowly. His voice was calm but firm. Because I didn't bring you here to use you, Glory. I brought you here to love you when you're ready. He took her hand, looked her in the eye. This marriage will be built on love, not fear, not obligation. Only when your heart says yes, then I'll be ready. And for the first time in her life, Glory felt safe in silence. Would you wait for love even in marriage? Let's talk about what real respect looks like in the comments. Glory was beginning to bloom. She cooked, she wrote recipes, she smiled more often. One sunny afternoon, Mrs. Walker called her in. My cook has traveled abroad, she said. I need someone I can trust. And I've been watching you, Glory. Glory's mouth opened. You mean me? Mrs. Walker smiled. You're humble, hardworking, you deserve this chance. Glory's voice broke with emotion. Ma, I've been saving to go back to school. I want to go to university. Mrs. Walker hugged her warmly. Then we'll make it happen. This house supports dreams, not just chores. Would you accept a job offer that came with the promise of education? What would you do if your dream was one step away? 2 days into her new role, Glory was preparing vegetable soup in the kitchen when the door creaked open. A tall, handsome man stood at the entrance, smirking. Damn, you're beautiful, he said. Glory stood still, uncomfortable. My mom told me about you, he continued. But I didn't think she meant this beautiful. He walked closer, dropping flirtatious lines, promises, compliments laced with something darker. Glory kept her eyes on the pot. Good afternoon, sir, she said calmly, trying to hide her fear. But her gut was screaming, this man is dangerous. If someone made you feel unsafe at work but didn't touch you yet, would you report them or stay quiet? That night, Glory sat beside Harrison outside. Your boss's son came into the kitchen, she said. He made me uncomfortable. Harrison smiled, brushing it off. Daniel, he jokes like that. Don't mind him. Glory frowned. He looked at me like I was something to eat. Harrison held her hand. Don't worry. If he ever crosses the line, I'll be there. Glory nodded, but her heart was heavy. Because in her gut, she knew Daniel wasn't joking. Have you ever been dismissed after raising a red flag? Comment I have if you've ever been in Glory's shoes. Days later, Daniel returned. This time, he wasn't flirting, he was making an offer. Leave that poor security guy. Be mine instead, he said. I'll send you abroad. Buy you anything, start your life over. You're wasting your youth on a broke man. Glory's voice didn't shake. He may not have money, but he gave me something you never can. Peace. Daniel laughed. You'll regret this. She took a deep breath. If standing by the man who stood by me is a mistake, then I'll make it again and again. Would you turn down a life of luxury for loyalty? Tell us, which would you choose, comfort or character? That evening, Glory sat quietly beside Harrison. Her hands were trembling. He came again, she said. Daniel. Harrison's jaw tightened. What did he say? He offered to pay you off. Told me I'd be better with him, abroad, fancy schools, designer clothes, if I just left you. Harrison stood in silence, his fists clenched. But Glory stepped closer and whispered. And I told him, no, I told him I believe in you and us. In what we're building step by step, Harrison's eyes welled. You stood by me. She nodded ... because you stood by me first. Is love without luxury still love? Comment real if you believe love built on loyalty still exists. The next morning, Glory couldn't take it anymore. She walked straight to the main house, knocked on the door, and stood face to face with Mrs. Walker. Ma, I need to talk to you. Please don't be angry. Mrs. Walker welcomed her in. Glory inhaled deeply and said it. Your son keeps harassing me. She listed everything the offers, the pressure, the threats. But what Mrs. Walker said next shocked her. You should consider it, my dear. This is a good opportunity. For you and for Harrison, we'll pay him off. Comfort awaits you both. Glory's voice turned cold. Ma, I am not for sale. She stood up, chin high. If your son doesn't stop, we will leave. I won't stay where I am disrespected. And with that, she walked out, shaking but unbroken. Would you walk away from a dream life if it meant losing your dignity? Type yes if you believe self-respect comes before comfort. When Glory returned to the boys' quarters, something stunned her. Bundles of cash sat neatly on the table. Her eyes widened, her voice cracked. Harrison. Where did this come from? He smiled softly. It's mine. I've been saving it for years to start my dream business. Then he added something that shook her more. But I want you to use it for university. Glory's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. Never. If someone offered you everything they had for your dream, would you take it or protect their dream instead? Harrison stood in silence, confused. Why won't you take it? Glory's eyes were burning now. Because you saved this money with blood and sweat. It's your dream and I won't destroy it for mine. She paced the floor. Let's use this together. Rent a small room. Start your business. I'll help. I'll cook. I'll sell. When we succeed, then I'll go to school. Her voice steadied. I don't want to live in a palace built on pity. I want a future we build together. Harrison stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You're not just beautiful, you're wise. You're everything I prayed for. What's more powerful, a shared dream or a gifted one? Tell us what you choose in the comments. Later that evening, Harrison returned. Glory didn't even let him settle. Where were you all day? Mrs. Walker and Daniel came here. They said something weird. Harrison exhaled, then looked straight into her eyes. Glory, I need to tell you the truth. He sat her down, voice calm but serious. Daniel isn't my boss's son. Mrs. Walker isn't just my employer. Glory's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? Harrison took a deep breath. Daniel is my brother. And Mrs. Walker is my mother. Could you forgive someone who lied about their entire identity? Drop a if that twist just hit you hard. Glory stood up, stunned. You lied to me all this time. Harrison nodded, guilt in every word. I didn't do it to trick you. I've been used to many times by women who only wanted money, not love. His eyes softened. I had to know if someone could love me for who I am, not for what I have. Glory stayed silent for a moment, then smirked. So I married a billionaire pretending to be broke? He laughed nervously, basically. She rolled her eyes playfully. You owe me a mansion and a car, you liar. He burst out laughing. Consider it done, my queen. If your broke partner turned out to be a billionaire, what would your first demand be? Comment below. News traveled faster than fire in dry grass. By evening, Glory's phone rang. It was her father. My daughter, he stuttered. I was blind. He begged for forgiveness. Then came the real reason. Can your stepsister come stay with you in the city? Things are hard here. Glory's voice was calm, sharp. With all due respect, sir, never. He tried to speak again, but she cut him off. You sold me like a bag of rice. You don't get to ask for favors now. And she hung up for good. Would you forgive a parent who once discarded you? Let's debate it, yes or no. Years passed. Glory walked across the graduation stage in a glowing white coat, now a certified medical doctor. In the crowd, Harrison screamed, "That's my wife, Dr. Glory." After the ceremony, She hugged him tight. You believed in me. Even when I was just a girl with a black plastic bag, he kissed her forehead. And now, you're the woman I'm building empires with. One peaceful afternoon, Harrison blindfolded Glory. Where are we going? She asked, laughing. They drove quietly into a grand estate, pulled up to a white mansion with gold gates. He parked, took off her blindfold. Welcome home, he said, handing her the keys. This is your mansion, my queen, and yes, your car is parked inside. One peaceful afternoon, Harrison blindfolded Glory. Where are we going? She asked, laughing. They drove quietly into a grand estate, pulled up to a white mansion with gold gates. He parked, took off her blindfold. Welcome home, he said, handing her the keys. This is your mansion, my queen, and yes, your car is parked inside. Glory's pregnancy brought new light into their home. She was glowing. Harrison became even more tender, massaging her feet, cooking her cravings, reading parenting books late at night. One night, as they lay in bed, he placed a hand gently over her stomach. Do you think our baby will know what we went through? Glory smiled softly. No, that's the point. We went through it so they won't have to. And just like that, two broken souls once discarded by the world were now building a legacy that would never know pain the way they had. Just when things seemed perfect, a letter arrived. It was from the village, from her father. Glory, I am sick. I don't have long, I need to see you. Harrison read it, his jaw tight, but Glory just stared at the paper. He sold me, and now he wants comfort? Tears gathered in her eyes. She was no longer the weak girl with the broom. I forgave him once, but I'm not God. I don't forget. Still, a part of her heart trembled. Would you go? Glory decided to go, not for him, but for herself. She walked through the village like a storm in white silk, heads turned. The same mouths that once whispered she's cursed now gasped ... Her father lay on a bamboo mat, older, thinner, weaker. He tried to sit up. My daughter. She didn't cry, didn't kneel. I came, that's enough. He reached out. Please, forgive me. She stared into the eyes that once threw her away and whispered, I already did, but I'll never forget. And she laughed because healing doesn't need applause. Glory gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Grace, a name that once brought her pain. Now transformed into power, Mrs. Walker, now a proud grandmother, held the child and wept. You've given this family a future, she whispered. And Daniel, he visited once, apologized genuinely. You were never meant to be second, he said. I was wrong. Glory nodded. Apology accepted, but our lives are not connected anymore. And with that, she closed the chapter with kindness, but no return. To celebrate their new life, Harrison and Glory hosted a small gathering. Old friends, new neighbors, a few familiar faces from the village. As guests stepped inside their mansion, mouths dropped. This is the same Glory who used to fetch firewood. One whispered, I heard she was given away like change. But now, she stood tall, baby on her hip, glowing in gold. I was never nothing, she said quietly. They just couldn't see my worth, and the crowd, silent in awe. Because the girl they once called worthless, now owned the house they dreamed of. After the party, Glory sat alone by the balcony. The city lights sparkled below. Harrison came out with 2 mugs of tea. Why so quiet, my queen? She smiled faintly. I was just thinking how everyone once looked at me like trash. And now they bow with fake smiles. Harrison sat beside her. They bowed too late. You've always been a queen. Even when you slept on the floor, she nodded slowly. I didn't need their praise to know my worth. But tonight, I enjoyed watching their jaws drop. They clinked mugs and laughed softly. 1 month later, a journalist reached out. We want to tell your story to inspire young girls. Glory hesitated. She remembered the shame, the broom, the day she was traded like labor. But Harrison encouraged her. Tell the truth. Let the world know you didn't just survive, you rose. During the interview, the journalist asked, "What would you say to girls still stuck in villages like yours?" Glory looked straight into the camera. "You're not broken. You're not worthless. You're just buried in the wrong soil. Grow anyway." After the interview aired, people praised her. But not everyone was kind. On social media, trolls surfaced. She was given away like a goat, married rich by luck, not worth. Glory saw the comments, her hand trembled. But her heart calm. She opened her phone, typed one reply. "I was not given away, I was planted, and now I bloom." The post went viral. And the trolls silenced. Because no lie lasts long when truth is loud and proud. That night, Harrison found her crying softly on the bed. The comments, she nodded. He sat beside her. "We planned a quiet life. A business, a baby, peace, but now you're on TV, magazines. You're inspiring thousands." She looked at him nervously. "Is it too much?" He shook his head. "It's perfect. Because now, the world sees what I saw the first day I looked at you on that farm." He kissed her hand. "My quiet queen, now the voice of millions." One afternoon, Glory sat at her desk, pen in hand. She was writing a letter to the girl she used to be. "Dear me, I know you're tired. I know you cry at night, unheard. I know you hate your reflection. But listen closely, you are not what they say. Your value doesn't shrink because they don't see it." She folded the letter, placed it in a journal. Not to send, not to share, but to remember. Because sometimes the hardest forgiveness is forgiving the version of you who didn't know better. It was raining softly when the doorbell rang. Harrison opened it and froze. There stood Mrs. Grace, Glory's cruel stepmother, soaked, trembling, alone. "Please," she whispered, "I have nowhere to go." Glory stepped forward, her stomach turned. The woman who once starved her, beat her, called her useless, was now begging for shelter. Glory's eyes narrowed. "You want to stay under the roof of the girl you once threw into the dirt?" Mrs. Grace said nothing, but the silence screamed. Harrison looked at Glory, waiting for her answer. Glory walked slowly toward Mrs. Grace and handed her a clean towel. "You may stay, for one night." Mrs. Grace tried to speak, but Glory cut her off. "This is not forgiveness. This is mercy, and tomorrow you leave." That night, Glory lay awake, staring at the ceiling. "I gave her one night," she whispered. Harrison replied softly. "And that's one night more than she ever gave you." At sunrise, Mrs. Grace stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand. "Before I go," she said softly, "can I say something?" Glory nodded. "I was jealous of you," Grace admitted. "Your spirit, your mother's kindness, your beauty, and I took it out on you." Tears formed in Glory's eyes, but they didn't fall. "You didn't break me," she said. "You built the woman who outgrew your hatred." And just like that, Mrs. Grace disappeared from their lives forever. Weeks later, Glory was invited to speak at a young women's summit. Hundreds gathered. Some wore secondhand shoes, others carried notebooks with dreams written in pencil. Glory stood on stage, looked into eyes that reflected her past. "I wasn't rescued," she began. "I was released from pain, from shame, from the cage others built around me." The room fell silent. You don't need a rich man to save you. You need the courage to believe that you are enough even if no one claps. They rose to their feet, tears, cheers, fire. That night, Glory was tucking baby Grace into bed. "Mama," the little girl whispered. "Yes, my love, were you always this strong?" Glory paused, her throat tightened. "No. I used to cry every night." "Why?" Grace asked. Glory leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Because I hadn't met you yet." And in that single moment, everything she suffered made sense. One morning, an email arrived. Subject line: "Invitation to speak at the International Women's Forum, London." Glory froze. "Why me?" she whispered. Harrison read over her shoulder. "Because you are not just a survivor, you're a symbol." She hesitated. "But I'm not polished." I didn't go to finishing school. I still fumble my English, he smiled. That's exactly why they want you. You're not their version of perfect, you're real. The conference was grand, powerful women. Global names, cameras, reporters, Glory waited backstage, heart racing. She gripped a folded note in her palm, the letter to her younger self. A coordinator approached. Are you ready, Dr. Glory? She nodded slowly, walked onto stage. The spotlight hit her face. She scanned the crowd and began. I'm not here as a perfect woman. I'm here as a woman they once called worthless. I was born in dust and now I fly in light. The room stood still. After the speech, she sat in a quiet London park. She pulled out the old journal, the one where she had hidden her pain in words. She opened it to the letter she wrote years ago. And this time, she added one last line. Dear past me, you didn't just survive. You gave birth to a future full of fire. You're not forgotten, you are free. She closed the journal and let the last page of her pain finally rest. When Glory returned from London, Harrison and baby Grace were waiting. She held them tight. Let's build that second school, she said. Where? Harrison asked. In the village, where I was born. Let's turn the dust that once buried me into a foundation for others. Months later, they stood before a new school sign. The Glory Foundation Academy, for every forgotten girl. Girls lined up in clean uniforms, books in hand, hope in their eyes. And not one of them would ever have to be treated like Glory once was. That night, Glory stood by her daughter's bed. She whispered a quiet prayer. May you never know hunger the way I did. May your beauty never be punished. May your voice never be silenced. And may you grow knowing your worth is unshakable. Harrison joined her. Together, they held their daughter's small hand. You are the answer to our pain, Glory whispered. And as baby Grace smiled in her sleep, they realized they had become the very thing they once dreamed of, safe, whole, unstoppable. Glory was in a boardroom meeting when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something in her spirit told her to answer. Hello, she whispered. The voice on the other end was trembling. Is this Dr. Glory Thomas, the one from Amiri Village? Is this Dr. Glory Thomas, the one from Amiri Village? Yes, who is this? My name is Ngozi. I'm 17. I was about to give up on life until I saw your story. She paused, then said something Glory would never forget. You saved me. Glory covered her mouth as silent tears fell in front of CEOs and investors. Because this was what she was truly building. Weeks later, at the ribbon cutting of a second school in a rural town, a quiet man in worn shoes stood watching her. He waited until the crowd thinned, then approached slowly. Dr. Glory, do you remember me? She squinted, then gasped. It was Samuel, her little half-brother. The one who once stood behind their father's house, crying silently as she left. I searched for you, he whispered. I watched you rise and you gave me hope. Glory wrapped him in a tight hug. No words, just healing. Some wounds don't need explanations, just presence. That night, Harrison took her on a quiet drive. No blindfolds this time, just stillness and stars. He stopped the car at a small clearing near a lake. There, surrounded by candles, stood a framed picture of Glory beside an easel with a plaque. This is where we broke ground for your Women's Recovery Center. For girls like you, for stories like ours. Glory stared at it, then slowly sank to the ground and wept. Not from pain, but from something deeper, legacy. She walked through the empty center after it was built. Every room had a name. Courage, healing, rebirth. In the lobby stood one glass case. Inside, a broken wooden broom. The same one she used to sweep the compound when her stepmother called her worthless, and under it, a sign. She was never trash, she was training. Years later, her daughter stood on the same stage her mother once did. Little Grace, now grown, told a crowd. My mother was once thrown away, but she came back with fire. She turned betrayal into a blueprint. and silence into a song, the audience cried, applauded. The audience cried, applauded because this wasn't just a family story. It was a blueprint from dust to dynasty. From broom to beacon, and as Grace stepped down, Glory whispered from the front row, "Fly higher than I ever did." One quiet evening, Harrison prepared dinner. No fancy chefs, no cameras. Just him, her, and Grace laughing as they made burnt jollof rice that still tasted like home. Glory sat back, watching them, and for the first time, she said it out loud. This is my heaven. Not a mansion, not the stages, not the wealth. Just laughter, safety, and love, the things she once prayed for with an empty stomach and swollen feet. A call came from the United Nations. They wanted to honor her as a global advocate for women's dignity. On stage, under lights she never chased, Glory stood silently. Then she said, "The world once called me nothing today. They call me doctor, mother, founder, wife. But the title I wear most proudly is survivor." And when she raised the glass award, thousands stood, not because she had power, but because she gave it away. On her 50th birthday, Glory walked into a surprise. A room filled with every girl the center had ever helped. Some were nurses, others lawyers, some just smiling mothers. Each one held a card, each one had a story. And they all chanted in unison, "Thank you for becoming the woman we needed." Glory broke into tears. She couldn't speak. She didn't need to ... because sometimes your echo is louder than your voice. Glory sat on her balcony again. Older now, softer in voice, stronger in soul. A young journalist asked her, "What's one thing you tell a girl who thinks she never make it?" Glory looked into the distance, then smiled. "Tell her this, you weren't born broken. You were born buried, and when the time is right, you'll rise." She looked into the camera. "They tried to bury me, but they didn't know I was a seed." The screen fades to black. If you were a seed, what did life try to bury you with? And how did you grow? This is your story now. Drop your answer below.